Jelly Bean Story Page, Nacho Kart Heroes. Geoffrey, Juan, and Serena were best friends, and this year they had a big mission. Their school Christmas pageant was coming up, but it needed a boost, more lights, better costumes, and maybe even a real little tree for the stage. They knew their school didn't have the budget for it, so they came up with a brilliant plan. "We'll sell nachos," Serena exclaimed one afternoon. "Everybody loves nachos. We can sell them to the other kids after school and make enough to buy the best decorations." Geoffrey nodded. "But we'll need supplies, chips, cheese, salsa, and jalapenos. And maybe some sour cream, too." Excited, they gathered everything they needed. Juan's dad let them use an old food cart he had in the garage. They cleaned it up, decorated it with sparkly tinsel, and made a big, colorful sign that read, "Nacho Average Nachos." The next day, they set up outside the school, hearts racing with excitement. Disaster number 1, the cheese explosion. Their first customer, Tommy, was a regular in the lunchroom line, always ready for seconds. Geoffrey carefully lifted a big pot of warm, gooey cheese to pour over Tommy's nachos. But as he tilted it, a sudden clumsy slip caused the cheese to slosh over the side. Splat! Cheese splattered everywhere, on the cart, on the ground, and on Geoffrey himself. "Oh no!" Geoffrey cried, looking at the cheesy mess at his feet. Juan laughed, patting Geoffrey on the back, leaving a cheese handprint on his shirt. "Don't worry, Geoffrey. We've got more cheese in the pot." They cleaned up as best they could and carried on, giggling every time they saw a cheesy footprint. Disaster number 2, the salsa spice fiasco. The line was finally moving, and more kids were coming to get nachos. But just when things were looking up, Serena noticed that the jar of salsa looked emptier than it should. "Juan, did you use the whole jar?" Serena asked, eyes wide. I thought we needed extra salsa for flavor," Juan said, shrugging. He hadn't realized he'd poured in all of the extra spicy salsa. One by one, the kids tried their nachos and made all sorts of funny faces, some even ran to the water fountain. Tommy took a big bite and gasped, "Hot! Hot! Too hot!" Geoffrey quickly started handing out cups of water. "Sorry, everyone. The next batch will be mild, promise." Serena whipped up a new batch of nachos with milder salsa and made sure to let everyone know. "Free water with every order," she announced, and soon they had people laughing and coming back for more. Disaster number 3, the Great Nacho Downpour. Business was booming by the end of the day. Even the teachers had stopped by to support the cause. Just as the kids were getting ready to call it a day, the sky darkened. A gust of wind rushed through the yard, rattling the cart, and without warning, their sign blew right off. It soared into the air and disappeared into the nearby tree. As they watched the sign disappear, a drop of rain splashed onto Serena's nose. "Oh no," she whispered, looking up as more raindrops began to fall. "It's starting to rain." The kids scrambled to cover their cart with a big tarp Juan had brought, but just as they got it in place, another gust of wind knocked over their stack of trays, sending chips flying everywhere. For a moment, they looked at each other, feeling defeated. They were wet, the cart was a mess, and they were nearly out of supplies. But Geoffrey was the first to smile. "You know what? We raised enough, and we made everybody laugh, even if it was because they were too spicy." Serena laughed, too. "And who cares if we're messy? We've got enough to make the pageant awesome." Juan nodded. "Let's call it a day, then. We've got enough to make a real difference." Together, they packed up their cart, still smiling even though they were soaked and a bit cheesy. They counted up their money and realized they had more than they'd expected. enough to buy the decorations they wanted and even a little extra for some Christmas treats. A week later, the kids were backstage at the pageant, watching the stage light up with the decorations they'd helped buy. The costumes sparkled, the tiny tree twinkled, and the teachers had even added a festive banner that read, "Nacho Average Christmas." As the final song played, Geoffrey, Juan, and Serena looked at each other and beamed with pride. They'd had their share of disasters, cheese splatters, spice mishaps, and a windy rainstorm, but they'd stuck together and achieved their goal. The kids in the audience started chanting, "Nacho Heroes! Nacho Heroes!" and the trio laughed, bowing to their adoring crowd. They'd started out as three friends with a nacho cart, and they ended up as the heroes of the Christmas pageant.